My wife suddenly demanded that we move to her home country, even though I refused because my job is here. I was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through emails, when she walked in and dropped the bomb. Her words hit me like a thunderclap. Want us to move, she said, her voice firm. If you don't agree, I'll file for divorce. I froze. I couldn't process what she was saying. Divorce? Over moving? I had never imagined our conversations turning into threats like this. I asked her to explain, to tell me why it was so urgent. She said she missed her family, her friends, and her country. She painted a picture of a perfect life abroad, a life where she would be happy, where we could start fresh. I tried to reason with her. My job is here, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. We've built our life here. I can't just leave everything behind. But she didn't listen. Every word I said seemed to fuel her anger. She reminded me of all the times I had promised to support her dreams, accused me of being selfish, and insisted that if I truly loved her, I would follow her wherever she wanted to go. Days passed, and the tension in the house grew unbearable. Every conversation, even about simple things like dinner or groceries, ended in arguments. I started losing sleep, thinking about what the future might hold. I asked myself how it could come to this, how love could suddenly feel like a battlefield. Also noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She would disappear into her phone for hours, speaking in whispers, or spending long periods with her family on video calls. I began to feel excluded, like an outsider in my own marriage. My attempts to talk, to understand, only made things worse. I reached out to friends, trying to find advice, but everyone had a different opinion. Some said I should compromise for the sake of our marriage. Others told me to stand my ground, not to sacrifice my career for a sudden whim. Meanwhile, she kept pushing. She made lists, showing all the benefits of moving, from better weather to family support, and even brought up potential jobs she could help me find abroad. But nothing could mask the threat she had placed on our relationship. Now, every day feels like walking on a tightrope. I don't know which step will trigger the next fight, or if one day I will come home to find that the divorce papers are waiting for me. My mind races constantly. Should I give in, or should I hold my ground even if it costs everything? And yet, the conversation isn't over. She keeps hinting at more decisions, more ultimatums. The tension is thick in the air, and I feel trapped, unsure of what tomorrow will bring. The days after her demand felt like walking through a storm with no shelter. Every morning, I woke up with a tight knot in my stomach, dreading the first word she would speak. She seemed calmer on the surface, but there was a tension in her eyes that betrayed the storm beneath. She began bringing up the move at random moments, while I was cooking, while I was checking emails, even during quiet moments when I thought we were at peace. Each mention was like a spark threatening to ignite another argument. One evening, I tried a different approach. I suggested we make a list of pros and cons, a way to see things clearly. She agreed, but it quickly turned into a debate rather than a discussion. Her list was perfect. Her family, her childhood friends, the city she loved. My list was practical. My job, our home, our routines, and stability. She dismissed my points with a sigh, telling me that practical things shouldn't outweigh happiness. Her tone became sharper, and I could see frustration growing. She accused me of caring more about my job than our marriage, of valuing comfort over love. I tried to explain that it wasn't about comfort, but about responsibility and security. But she was relentless, speaking with a conviction that left little room for compromise. I started noticing other changes, too. She began researching schools, neighborhoods, and apartments in her home country, even though I hadn't agreed. She would casually mention how we could sell our house here, or how easy it would be to start fresh abroad. Every conversation made me feel smaller, like my voice no longer mattered. Sleep became impossible. I would lie awake at night thinking about all the possibilities, trying to imagine life in another country, away from friends, family, and everything familiar. I wondered if I could ever be happy there, or if I would be constantly resenting her for forcing this change. And then came the threats again. Subtle at first. Comments about what life would be like without me, what she would do if I refused. But soon they became direct, almost rehearsed. Divorce loomed over our heads like a storm cloud, and every discussion felt like navigating a minefield. I tried reaching out, asking for advice, searching forums, talking to friends, anyone who might understand. Everyone seemed to have a different opinion, leaving me more confused than before. I couldn't tell if compromise meant saving our marriage or if it meant giving up everything I had worked for. As the days went on, the atmosphere in our home grew heavier. Silence filled the spaces between our words, a tense pause that neither of us dared to break. I felt trapped, powerless, watching as the woman I loved seemed to be slipping away, pulled by desires and ultimatums that I couldn't meet. And still, the story isn't over. The discussions continue, the arguments flare up and fade, but the core problem remains. Every day brings a new challenge, a new test of patience, love, and endurance. Days turned into weeks, and the tension at home seemed to grow with every passing moment. Each morning, I woke up dreading the inevitable conversation about the move. My wife's eyes held a mixture of determination and frustration, and I could sense that she had already made up her mind, leaving me caught in the middle. She started planning more aggressively. I found brochures on my desk, apartments, neighborhoods, even potential jobs she imagined for me abroad. I asked her to stop, explaining that planning without agreement felt disrespectful, but she simply smiled and said, "We're just preparing for the future." Her words felt like a thin veil over the storm she was building. Arguments escalated daily. Small disagreements turned into major conflicts. If I mentioned work, she would accuse me of ignoring her needs. If I tried to talk about the logistics, she would say I was making excuses. It seemed like no matter what I said or did, it wasn't enough. One evening, things came to a head. We were having dinner, and she casually mentioned a possible school for our future children in her country. I felt a surge of frustration. "We don't even know if we'll move. Why are you planning everything already?" I shouted, my voice trembling with anger and fear. She looked at me calmly, almost too calmly, and replied, "If you loved me, you'd understand that I can't wait forever. Life doesn't wait, and neither do I." Her words hit me harder than I expected. It was like standing on a cliff, knowing one wrong move could make everything fall apart. I tried to step away, to give myself space to think, but she followed, cornering me in the living room. Her voice was softer now, but there was a dangerous intensity in her eyes. She spoke of dreams, of family, of the perfect life she envisioned for us. Yet behind the softness, there was an unspoken threat: agree or risk losing everything. I began feeling isolated. Friends tried to help, but no one could understand the weight of this decision. Family members offered opinions, but each suggestion only added to the confusion. I found myself lying awake at night, imagining life in another country. Strange. Streets, unfamiliar faces, and the possibility of losing not just my job, but a part of myself. Even my own habits started to change. I avoided certain topics, stayed quiet more often, and tried to gauge her mood before saying a word. Walking around my own home felt like navigating a minefield, where one misstep could trigger another argument or another threat. And yet, every day, the conversation continued. Subtle reminders, indirect threats, and carefully phrased ultimatums kept me constantly on edge. I didn't know how much longer I could endure this. I was trapped between love and logic, between duty and desire, unsure which path would lead, to peace or heartbreak. The story is far from over. Each day brings a new challenge, a new conversation, a new test of patience and courage. The path ahead is uncertain, and I have no idea what the next turn will bring. The tension that had filled our home for weeks finally reached a breaking point. I could no longer avoid the conversation that seemed to hang over us like a dark cloud. One evening, I gathered my courage and sat down with her, determined to speak honestly about my feelings. "I can't just leave everything behind," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "My job, our life here, everything we've built, it's not just about comfort. It's about responsibility, about what's best for both of us." She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes softening, the anger and frustration of the past weeks slowly giving way to vulnerability. "I wanted you to understand how important this is to me," she admitted quietly. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I couldn't stop thinking about my life back home." We talked for hours, honestly and openly, about our fears, desires, and what we truly wanted from our marriage. Slowly, we began to realize that compromise was possible, not by one of us giving up everything, but by finding a path that respected both our needs. We agreed to take time, to research options carefully, and to make a decision together rather than under pressure or threats. It wasn't easy, and the road ahead would still be challenging, but for the first time in weeks, there was a sense of hope. Sometimes, love isn't just about agreeing on everything. It's about listening, understanding, and finding a middle ground, even when it seems impossible. And in that moment, I realized that our marriage could survive as long as we faced the challenges together. And so our story comes to an end today. But in the world of Max Fables, every tale carries a lesson and leaves an impact. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you won't miss our upcoming tales. Here, where stories come to life.